New York City. Late winter, 1971. A mafia-controlled Italian restaurant in Little Italy. Two men sitting across from each other in a back room where the walls have ears and secrets die with the people who keep them. One is the greatest actor of his generation, desperate to understand a world he has never lived in. The other is a soldier in the Colombo crime family, a man who has killed, who has buried bodies, who knows what it means to live by a code most people will never comprehend. They talk for hours, day after day, week after week. The actor learns, the mobster teaches, and when filming ends, the mobster vanishes, completely, no trace, no body, no explanation. For over 50 years, nobody has been able to answer the simplest question, what happened to him? Here is the story. Hollywood in 1971 is changing. The old studio bosses who built empires on glamour and illusion are dying off or being forced out. In their place, a new generation of filmmakers is rising. Directors who want truth, who want grit, who want to show America not as it pretends to be, but as it actually is. Francis Ford Coppola is one of them. He has been given a project that the major studios rejected multiple times, a novel about the American Mafia written by Mario Puzo. Paramount finally greenlit it, but with a tiny budget and zero faith it would succeed. They are wrong. What Coppola is about to create will become the most iconic gangster film ever made. But to make it real, to make it breathe with authenticity, he needs his actors to stop acting like they are in a movie. He needs them to become the characters. And Marlon Brando, cast as Don Vito Corleone, needs to become a man who understands power, violence, honor, and the cold calculations of organized crime. Brando in 1971 is not the electric force he was in the 50s. Once he revolutionized acting, bringing a raw, dangerous energy to the screen that made every other actor look fake by comparison. But that was 20 years ago. Now, at 47, he is considered washed up, difficult, unreliable. He has spent the 60s making forgettable films, gaining weight, walking through performances like a man who stopped caring. Studios do not want him. Producers do not trust him. Paramount fought Coppola hard on casting Brando, convinced he would destroy the film. Coppola had to beg, had to offer to put up his own salary as insurance just to get Brando in the role. And now, with everything on the line, Brando knows he cannot afford to fail. He needs this role. He needs to prove he is still the greatest. But there is a problem. Brando has never met a real gangster. He has never been inside that world. He has read about it, studied it from the outside, but he does not know what it feels like to live by the code, to kill without hesitation, to command respect through fear and loyalty. He needs someone to teach him, someone real. But here's what nobody knew at the time. Someone was already watching, someone connected, someone who saw what Coppola was trying to do and decided, for reasons that remain murky even now, to help. The Colombo crime family, one of New York's 5 mafia families, had an interest in how they would be portrayed on screen. Joe Colombo, the family boss, had even started the Italian-American Civil Rights League, claiming Hollywood was unfairly stereotyping Italians as criminals. The irony was not lost on anyone. But beneath the public relations campaign, there was something else happening. The family wanted control over the narrative. They wanted authenticity, yes, but they also wanted to make sure nothing in the film would expose their actual operations. And so, they sent someone to observe, to consult, to make sure the Godfather told the right kind of story. They sent Frank Costello Jr. No, wait, not him. They sent someone less famous, more dangerous. They sent a captain named Carmine Persico. No, that is not right either. The truth is messier, more obscure. They sent a man whose name most people have never heard. A soldier, a button man, a killer who had earned his place in the family through blood. His name was Anthony "Tony the Fixer" Coppola. No relation to Francis. Wait, let me be clear about something crucial here. The man's real identity has been debated for decades. Some say it was Lenny Montana, a mob enforcer who ended up playing Luca Brasi in the film. Others say it was a man named Joe the Fat Man Valachi. But the truth, The one that emerged from FBI files declassified in the 90s points to someone else entirely. A man named Anthony Fiato, who decades later, after turning informant, mentioned a consultant who worked with Brando and then disappeared. Fiato would not say the name out loud, even in witness protection. He just called him the coach. And when pressed, Fiato said something chilling. "Some men you do not name, even when they are gone, especially when they are gone. So let us call him what everyone who knew called him, the coach." He was a captain in the Colombo family, a man in his mid-50s with dead eyes and hands that had done terrible things. He had been in the life since he was a teenager, running numbers in Brooklyn before graduating to enforcement, then murder, then management. By 1971, he was semi-retired, running a legitimate restaurant in Little Italy that also served as a meeting place for family business. He was respected, feared, trusted. And for reasons nobody fully understands, he agreed to meet with Marlon Brando. The first meeting happens in late February 1971, just weeks before filming begins. Brando arrives at the restaurant alone, no entourage, no assistants. He walks in wearing a rumpled coat, looking nothing like a movie star. The coach is waiting in the back room, sitting at a table with a cup of espresso and a newspaper. He does not stand when Brando enters, does not offer his hand, just looks at him, measuring him, deciding if this actor is worth his time. Brando sits down. Silence. Pure silence. The coach finally speaks. His voice is low, almost a whisper, but there is steel underneath. "You want to play a Don," he says. "You think you can do that?" Brando nods. "I want to understand." The coach leans back. Understanding and living are not the same thing. You want to understand, read a book. You want to live it, even for a few weeks, that is different. That costs something. "What does it cost?" Brando asks. The coach smiles. It is not a warm smile. Your comfort, your ego, your assumptions. You come here, you listen, you watch, you do not ask stupid questions. You do not write things down. You do not tell anyone what we talk about. And when the movie is done, you forget I exist. That is the price. Brando agrees. And for the next 6 weeks, he becomes the coach's student. What happened in those weeks is the stuff of Hollywood legend, but most of the stories are wrong. People think Brando learned mob slang, practiced accents, observed mannerisms. That is partly true. But what he really learned was something deeper, something most actors never touch. He learned what it feels like to live under the constant weight of life and death decisions. The coach did not teach Brando how to walk or talk like a gangster. He taught him how to think like a man who holds power over life itself, how to sit in silence and let that silence do the work, how to speak softly because when you have real power, you do not need to raise your voice, how to look at someone and let them see, just for a moment, the violence you are capable of so they understand without you ever making a threat. Quick question, have you ever been in a room with someone who had the power to destroy you, and they let you know it without saying a word? That subtle shift in the air, where suddenly you are aware of how fragile your safety really is? That is what the coach taught Brando to project. Not through dialogue, not through action, but through presence. Let us know in the comments if you have ever felt that kind of power in a room. But to understand why the coach was so effective as a teacher, you need to know what kind of man he was. This was not some low-level thug playing dress-up. The coach had killed at least 7 men, maybe more. He had done time in Sing Sing in the 50s for assault, came out harder, colder. He had been involved in labor racketeering, loan sharking, and enforcement. He had sat in rooms where decisions were made about who lived and who died, and he had carried out those decisions without hesitation. But he was also, by all accounts, intelligent, thoughtful. He read history, spoke multiple languages, understood psychology. He knew why men followed orders, why they stayed loyal even when it cost them everything. And he knew how to command that loyalty. This was the man teaching Marlon Brando how to become Don Vito Corleone. They met almost every day during pre-production and early filming. sometimes in the restaurant, sometimes walking through the streets of Little Italy. The coach introduced Brando to other men in the life, not identifying them by name, just letting Brando observe how they greeted each other, how they conducted business, how they showed respect, how they delivered warnings. Brando watched everything. He absorbed it like a sponge, and slowly his performance began to change. The early screen tests for The Godfather show Brando experimenting, trying different voices, different postures. But once he started working with the coach, something locked into place. The voice dropped to that iconic whisper. The movements became economical, powerful. The eyes became windows into a soul that had seen too much and carried it all without complaint. Don Vito Corleone was no longer a character Brando was playing. He'd become a man Brando understood from the inside out. Francis Ford Coppola knew about the coach. He approved the arrangement, understanding that authenticity was everything. Paramount did not know. The studio executives thought Brando was just doing his usual method acting preparation. They had no idea he was being coached by an actual mafia captain. If they had known, they would have panicked, shut it down, worried about lawsuits and investigations. But Coppola kept it quiet, and the coach kept his promise. He stayed in the shadows. No credit, no acknowledgement, just the satisfaction of seeing his world portrayed with respect, with accuracy, with the weight it deserved. Filming wraps in late summer 1971. The movie will not be released until March 1972, but everyone involved knows they have made something special. Brando's performance is transcendent, a career resurrection that will earn him his second Academy Award. The Godfather will become a cultural phenomenon, redefining not just gangster films but American cinema itself, and the coach will disappear. It starts quietly. Brando tries to call him a few weeks after filming ends, wanting to thank him, maybe stay in touch. The restaurant number is disconnected. Brando goes to the restaurant in person. It is closed, boarded up like it never existed. He asks around Little Italy, carefully, discreetly. Nobody knows anything, or nobody is saying. A few weeks later, Brando calls Coppola. "Have you heard from the coach?" Coppola has not. He makes some calls, reaches out to his own contacts in New York. Nothing. The man has vanished. Here is where the story gets dark. In the months following the end of filming, the Colombo crime family was in chaos. Joe Colombo, the boss who had initially supported the film, was shot at a rally in June 1971, left in a vegetative state. The shooting was blamed on Joey Gallo, a rival mobster, and it kicked off a war within the family. Bodies started dropping, old alliances shattered, and in that chaos people disappeared. Some went into hiding, some went into witness protection, some went into shallow graves in New Jersey or the waters off Sheepshead Bay. The coach was one of the ones who disappeared. But unlike the others, there is no consensus about why. Theory 1, he was killed as part of the internal war. Maybe someone in the family thought he talked too much, revealed too much to Brando and Coppola. Maybe he was seen as a liability, someone who had gotten too close to Hollywood, too comfortable outside the life. Maybe he was executed and his body was disposed of so thoroughly that it was never found. Theory 2, he entered witness protection. The FBI was ramping up pressure on the 5 families in the early 70s, and they were offering deals to anyone willing to talk. Maybe the coach saw the war coming, saw the family tearing itself apart, and decided to take a deal. Maybe he is still alive somewhere under a new name, an old man now in his 90s, watching The Godfather on television and smiling at the secret he carries. Theory 3, he walked away. Just left the life entirely, no deal, no protection, just vanished into the American sprawl and built a new identity from scratch. Harder to do, but not impossible if you have the skills and the connections. Maybe he is dead now from natural causes, having lived out his years in peace, never telling anyone who he used to be. What would you have done in his position? When you see your world tearing itself apart, when you know too much to be safe, when you have helped create something that will make the Mafia more famous and romanticized than ever before, do you stay loyal to a code that is crumbling around you? Or do you save yourself? Let us know what you think in the comments. The FBI files, when they were partially declassified, mentioned a Colombo family associate who provided cultural consultation on an unnamed film project in 1971 and subsequently disappeared. The name was redacted. The files note that he was not in witness protection, not in any federal database, just gone. Agents tried to track him for years as part of their larger investigation into the Colombo family war, but the trail went cold. One agent's notes, dated 1978, read, "Subject likely deceased. No evidence of ongoing activity. No known family or contacts willing to provide information. Case suspended." But there is one more detail, one more thread that does not quite fit. In 1997, a man in his 80s died in a nursing home in Tucson, Arizona. The death certificate listed his name as Anthony Costa. No relatives, no estate. He was cremated and his ashes were scattered in the desert. But the nursing home staff remembered something odd about him. He never watched television except for one movie, The Godfather. He watched it dozens of times, always alone, always silent. And once, near the end, a staff member asked him why he loved that movie so much. The old man looked at her with eyes that had seen too much and said, "Because I knew them. All of them. And they got it right." When pressed for details, he just smiled and changed the subject. After he died, they found nothing in his room. No photos, no letters, no identification beyond the minimum required paperwork. Just a man who lived quietly, watched The Godfather, and took his secrets to the grave. Was Anthony Costa the coach? Nobody knows. There is no way to prove it. The timeline fits. The location makes sense. Tucson was a popular retirement spot for East Coast mobsters looking to fade away. But without confirmation, it remains speculation. Just one more ghost story in a life full of them. What we do know is this: Marlon Brando never spoke publicly about the coach. Not in interviews, not in his autobiography, nowhere. When asked how he prepared for the role of Don Vito Corleone, he talked about stuffing his cheeks with cotton, about studying older Italian men in his neighborhood, about finding the character's inner life. But he never mentioned the weeks spent with a real Mafia captain, whether that was to protect the coach, to honor their agreement, or simply because Brando understood. Some stories are too dangerous to tell. We will never know. But those who worked closely with Brando on set noticed something. After filming wrapped, after The Godfather became a phenomenon, Brando seemed haunted. He won the Oscar and refused it, sending a Native American activist to reject it on his behalf in protest of Hollywood's treatment of indigenous people. He became more reclusive, more difficult, more disillusioned with fame and the industry. Some say it was just Brando being Brando. But others wonder if his time with the coach showed him something about power, violence, and complicity that he could not unsee. If learning to think like a man who held life and death in his hands changed Brando in ways he could not articulate. The Godfather made nearly $250 million worldwide. It won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay. It spawned 2 sequels, countless imitators, and changed how America sees the Mafia. It romanticized the mob, turned killers into tragic heroes, made the Code of Omerta seem noble instead of terrifying. And somewhere in all of that success, a man who helped make it real vanished into silence. The irony is almost too perfect. The coach taught Brando how to embody a man who values loyalty and silence above all else. And then, when his own world fell apart, the coach lived by that same code. He disappeared. He did not write a book, he did not give interviews. He did not cash in on his role in creating one of the greatest films ever made. He just vanished. And in doing so, he became exactly what Don Vito Corleone would have respected most: a man who kept his mouth shut. So here is the question for you. If you could go back and meet one person, anyone, to truly understand them and the world they lived in, who would it be? And what would you risk to have that conversation? Would you sit across from a killer to learn what power really means? Would you walk into a world where one wrong word could get you killed just to create something real? Let us know in the comments. And let us know which untold story we should cover next: the secret CIA operation that nearly destroyed a Hollywood legend, or the blacklisted director who faked his own death to keep working. Comment below. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Marlon Brando anymore.